Hey, in today's episode of the Rodney O Podcast, we are going to talk about opportunity. So you want to tune in, you want to dial in, you want to go ahead and listen, you want to go ahead and share this with a friend, because today on the Rodney O Podcast, we got something great for you. Like always, we're going to continue this series. And once again, thank you for joining in to the Rodney O Podcast. Opportunity knocks. You know, when I decided to go into ministry, being somebody of clergy, a pastor, pastoral ministry, whatever you want to call it. When I decided to do that, my story was kind of unique. There was kind of a unique situation when I did that. And that's because the typical person who is usually a pastor or somebody who goes into ministry or clergy, maybe besides Catholic, but anyway, Protestant-wise, definitely, they were married. They're married once, and they have kids or a family, and that's kind of like their home lifestyle, right? It's kind of what people look for when they go hire. Like somebody with a family already married. Let's meet the family. Let's meet the wife, etc. Right? But for me, it was kind of a unique situation that I was in because of my past. Had it wasn't really a shaky past. It was just not a past that most quote unquote Protestant Christians would probably want for a person going into ministry or being a pastor. And, even though like dramatic stories are okay, like, this dramatic conversion, I once was like, a gang member, but I got married in the family and I changed, those kind of things are also kind of unique and okay, right? Because, the current situation, your current status typically had to be married with a family. And so many places don't even hire you unless you're married for their pastors, and maybe for numerous reasons. And if they want to go into the whole infidelity thing, or, them being, that happens with married people too. So that can be a problem as well. But anyway, for me, I was in a situation where it was obvious I had a son. But I was never married. I wasn't currently married. And so I was a single parent. And, this even happened when I was a quote unquote believer, right? A quote unquote Christian. There were some years where I wasn't as involved as I usually was. I didn't follow the quote unquote path and things happen. And so be it. But, it was kind of interesting, that as we go here, I would have conversations. And the conversations would be, about my past. And, one person in particular, I remember this, he would ask me about my ex-wife, and I would correct him and say, well, you know what? I never really truly was married. Right. And then later in the conversation, he said again, okay, so your ex, and I said, well, yeah, I wasn't, my son's mom, I wasn't married to her. And so then he said a third time, and I let it go, because in his brain it engraved that, okay, he's not currently married. That's kind of okay. We're progressive, right? But the idea that I was doing this ministry and I was never married, which I couldn't have changed unless I went back and married that same person that was the mother of my kids, it just didn't make any sense. And so I recognize I'm being judged a lot by this, right? And even in my circles, everybody else on staff that was a pastor on staff, there were different churches and meetings and stuff, were married, had a family. And I was in a unique situation where that wasn't. But it didn't matter because it didn't change my effectiveness. And, once I got married, because I'm married now, I felt I was normalized. And I was now on, like everybody else. But again, not everybody felt this way because I was hired at some places, but a lot of places would not hire you unless, again, you were married in a family person. And so it kind of taught me, this experience kind of taught me something. And it wasn't all negative. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't all negative. It wasn't like bad, like this thing that was going around. But I know there were some that, it just was kind of interesting, and some couldn't get past it. Right. But the thing that I learned is you need to speak to everybody and not judge their past. Kind of get to know where they are now. Even if they're going through it right now, get to know them and talk to them, because each person has a unique story and a unique background, and there's no need to pass judgment on them. And so, as I said, opportunities can still happen, and they did for me, even though sometimes people feel like they won't. And what I mean by that is sometimes they feel like their past is that, and they can't overcome certain situations, and they feel they could never overcome. But trust me, that's what I'm talking about today, is that there will always have an opportunity, and an opportunity will always show up in your life. So we're going to dive further into this. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Rodney O Podcast. Today on the Rodney O Podcast, we're going to continue the series that I titled Survival Guide to 2020, John's Instruction Manual. And so today's topic, the topic title is An Opportunity Always Shows Up. An opportunity always shows up. And just as a reminder, I'll be teaching each week as we go through the Gospel of John, not to be confused with the books of the Bible of John, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. And so today we're going to go through the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verses 1 through 26. And so my hope is that those who are unfamiliar with the Bible can get a good intro into it, and I believe John's a good start for everybody. And so those who are more proficient in it, can kind of get a refresher as I talk, and hopefully they'll pass it on to other people who may need to hear it. And so the reason why I wanted to do this series is because it's 2020 and we have a crisis. There's COVID, there's racial tension, political fighting, there's fires, even though it's been some time now, but there's still fires going on in California especially. There's a lot of things going on, court cases being finalized and people up in arms about that. There's just a lot of things going on in 2020. And with all of that, I just wanted to give like a bright side, like some good news, because there is good news. We just have to do our part. And that's what the whole series is all about. Recognizing who the light is, recognizing who to go to, recognizing where your faith is, and doing your part to go and seek that out and do your part to make the world back to good. But as I dive in today, I kind of want to focus on your life, right? And if you live long enough and experience life long enough, you're bound to make some bad decisions, right? You're likely to do things that you probably shouldn't have done. And you're likely to have a lot of regrets in life. Now, in a perfect world, those will be forgotten. You wouldn't remember any of those things, and they wouldn't affect you. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And I mean, sure, yeah, some things you're able to forget, you'll be able to move past, but other things you just can't. I mean, there's things that we go through: divorce, maybe a criminal record, addictions to sex and drugs or alcohol. You have infidelity. You have broken and unrepairable relationships. Those are just some of the things that will change the way you act, that will change your personal situation and affect what you do daily because of those things that are in your past that isn't so easily like, oh, I'll get over that, right? Because they won't change. And it affects your future a little bit because of your circumstance. And so for most of us, we just want a chance to be new, to kind of move past what happened and just be accepted. And I can understand that it's hard to move past some of these things that are negative, right? Because of the negative talk, the negative chatter that's out there. I know a lot of people that are out there that just like to remind people about their past, remind them that they messed up, remind them like, hey, remember that thing you did back then? Or if you wouldn't have done that, your life would be different, right? Or you kind of screw things up for yourself. There are so many things that are built and designed to hold us back and not recognize the opportunity that we may have. Here's some things that we are told that we may buy into, which in turn holds us back, right? The whole thing is too late. It's too late for you, right? You messed up and it's going to affect the rest of your life. It's too late. The damage is already done, which may be true. There may be some damage done, but we can work to make the future better rather than focus on the past. The whole thing about no one will accept you now. Nobody's going to accept you. Like another one, you can't change. Like you're going to be that way the rest of your life. And my thing is, look, don't get sucked into negativity. Because here's the thing. There will always be an opportunity that will show up in our lives. And it's usually from an unlikely source at an unpredicted time. People can ask the question, how do we stay positive and look for opportunities when everything just seems to be wrong in our lives? The road is so full of negative that it can sometimes be hard to see anything positive. I mean, in our lives, we make mistakes, we do dumb things, we make bad decisions, we're often judged by them. And we hear all the gurus out there, motivational speakers, right? And even me, because I talk positive, right? Hey, just stay positive. Just get away from negative people. Get the negative people out of your life. The whole old, don't worry, be happy cliche. But in reality, and I understand this too, in reality, this is harder to do in practice in everyday life. In everyday life, it's easy to be discouraged and down and out. But we need to realize is that the positivity and opportunity will show up. Trust me. We just have to be aware of it and recognize it when it does. And the reason why I'm so sure is because it happened in my life over and over again. And some may say, well, that's great for you, Rodney, but for me, it never does. This never works out. And I will argue that if that's your mindset, it's a bad one. I have witnessed so many people who missed opportunities because they didn't recognize or take advantage of the opportunity that presented itself to them. And on the flip side of that, I've seen so many people that actually have recognized opportunities and they took full advantage of them and they're thriving. Well, let's dive in. Let me read the portion in the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verses 1 through 26 that I'm kind of referring to today in this podcast. And the title of this section says, Jesus talks with a Samaritan woman. Now, for some background, long story short, okay, back then in these days, women were just property. They were a little bit higher than property, but they were basically property and treated as such. Men didn't talk to women. They were used, again, as property. And Samaritan was a certain race that was despised, especially by Jews. And so here you have a Samaritan woman. So double negative, right? A race that's despised and a woman who's like property, basically. So let's keep that in mind as we read. Now, Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John. Although, in fact, it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. These rumors, think about rumors. There's a rumor. It's not true. He's not baptizing people, and people were keeping score. Who's doing more, Jesus or John? And John already made it clear that Jesus is greater. Go to him. I'm just somebody who's preparing the way and telling people about him. Anyway, let's continue. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" Now his disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For, like I said, Jews don't associate with Samaritans, and now especially a woman. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gives us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said, "Yes, you're right when you said you have no husband. And furthermore, the fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you are now with is not your husband. What you have said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet, a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers that the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." And so this thing kind of continues on. So it's like one big thing, but I'm going to split it in 3. But we'll go here now. Let's kind of unpack what we just read, right? It says that he had to go through Samaria, which is not true. Most Jews went around Samaria, a different path, because they didn't want to associate with Samaritans. right? They wanted to associate with other people who were like them, but not with Samaritans. So, but he had to go through Samaria, he says. And as a matter of fact, when he says he has to, it doesn't mean that he had no other choice. It means that he just had to, because he had to go meet this woman. He knew this woman would be there. So he says, I have to go here and talk to this woman. And so he goes to Samaria, and she's sitting there, and she's shocked that he's talking to her, right? Because again, he's not supposed to associate. And so she's shocked that he's talking to her, and not only that, right? Not only is he talking to her, he's asking her for water, and then as he had this conversation, Jesus says, "You know what? I'm gonna tell her that I know about her. Like, let me ask her a question." And she answered honestly. And so here you see the influencer. Here you see the light. Here you see the creator reaching out, going to meet this woman with this circumstance in her life. And he reaches out and gives her an opportunity to know who he is. This is the first time he actually said, I am he, I am the Messiah. And he revealed it to a Samaritan. Check that. He revealed it to a Samaritan woman. And that should speak volumes to us about the opportunity that he gives her and saying, this is who I am. You don't know who you worship, but I'm telling you, I am the one that's going to give you water, which is a metaphor, that's going to last you the rest of your life. This is an opportunity to have something that will last the rest of your life. And that's what it's all about. Because since we are not perfect, we're going to make bad choices and decisions, right? And it's great that we have a creator that will meet us where we're at and provide an opportunity for our lives so we can change. And that means we are never without hope. I mean, take a look at your life and count the number of times the creator showed up, whether you recognize it or not, right? Look back and you may realize that, hey, he showed up with an opportunity, but I didn't recognize it. Because hope is an incredible thing. It's what keeps us going. It also helps, and it's beneficial when we have hope in the right thing, which is the creator, because that hope will never, ever extinguish, will never be thirsty again. Because living a life without hope is not what we're created to do. You know, finding the one that gives us an opportunity will change our lives forever. Because without hope, we have nothing. There is no reason to be without hope, especially since we have the one that gives us hope through an opportunity. And so let me leave you with some next steps and things to do. First, look for the one that will give you hope and place your hope in him. Next, ignore the negative. The past is gone. Focus on the future. And lastly, be the one that reaches out, not the one who stays away. Well, please feel free to dialogue with me. My YouTube channel, Rodney O, is available for you guys to go check out those videos because I'm living what I speak. Please be sure to subscribe to that channel. The link is in the podcast description, or you can go to YouTube and search Rodney O. And so remember this. I want to inspire, encourage, and motivate all of you as you navigate this journey that we call life. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you guys in the next one.